Welcome back to Up the Villa podcast. This is our match preview for Manchester United, which now feels like the biggest game of the season. So we've brought out a big hitter for this one. Miguel Echegaray is in the building. How are you?
Up the Villa. Look at this. The podcast looks amazing. You boys look amazing. We're going to get 3 points on Sunday. We'll get into that in a second, but it's an absolute pleasure to be back to talk about the greatest club the game has ever seen.
Thank you very much. So, big game. Potential to go 11 points clear of Man United, which would be absolutely massive. But last two home games have been not the best from Villa. What have you made of the last two games at home for Aston Villa, Louis?
Well, listen, I think that, as anybody that follows me and reads or hears or watches my work knows that I'm the eternal optimist, but I'm also like a realist, and I try to combine the two. So when I look at what's recently gone on, we have to add a lot of context. I think there's two components here. And I think I'm specifically going to mention the midweek loss, disastrous loss to Chelsea in the FA Cup, and then looking ahead to Manchester United. I think it's very obvious that not having Pau Torres, not having Ezri Konsa is definitely a factor, including Lucas Dean as well. But I specifically focus on Konsa and Pau Torres because the way that we play, which is, we push high up, we like to control the tempo, but when we lose possession, when you have somebody like Pau Torres or Ezri Konsa, you can nullify what's coming your way before the opponent even knows it's coming. They're so good at timing things, specifically Pau Torres, and that hasn't happened in the last few matches, mainly because of Pau. Now, injuries, clearly an issue, but I was a bit worried with the Chelsea game because, and Luke, I saw some of what you were saying, and I'm in complete agreement. I think some of the mistakes were actually really amateurish. I think I had a drinking game every time Bouba Kamara did a misplaced pass. Like it was not typical of him. Like, we know that he's one of the best defensive midfielders in the game in Europe, not just the Premier League. So that was something that was not being used to see how badly he was passing in that game. The other part of it was tracking behind like the fullbacks, is like when Chelsea were coming forward and the ball went past Matty Cash or Alex Moreno and Nico Jackson was chasing it. Douglas Luiz or whoever were not doing a good enough job to tracking that second runner. That was another mistake. And then just like the midfield was just like the gaps were just bigger than McGinn's like behind. It was just ridiculous how much we were giving them. But the good news is that those are things that can be easily rectified. Like it was just like these things happen. I mean, not since Arsenal's undefeated season has a team ever gone throughout a season without like a ruckus, without losing a game. And I think this is ours, quite simply. It wasn't the Newcastle game, which I thought was a tactical mistake by Unai Emery and a great job by Eddie Howe. So the Chelsea game, I think, was more about, yes, we're missing players, but it was just a lack of focus, a bit lazy. And I'm more than confident that things like what happened with Kamara's passing and not tracking our players and the midfield gaps are just not going to happen against Manchester United. I don't know what the result's going to be. I'm hoping for 3 points, obviously, and we're going to talk about it. But like, I don't want people to freak out because I think that there is such a thing as, misplaced and misunderstood energy, specifically in that midweek game.
Yeah, I think you make some great points, and that observation I made it as well about the midfield gap from the defence to the midfield, and it's just too easy to play through. And I think that the thing that sort of worried me a little bit, especially in the last two games, is how easy we've become to play through a little bit. And I just think, like you're saying as well, it's easily rectified with some little subtle tweaks, really. I mean, against Man United, this is how I expect Man United to line up. But for me, the last two games, especially, we've been quite narrow, and I just feel like, especially here now, you've got Bailey quite narrow, Tielemans quite narrow, McGinn quite narrow, and for me, a subtle tweak that I would make is just make John McGinn and Bailey just a little bit more compact with that midfield, make it become a 4 instead of a 2-2-2. And I think that will also enable us, especially out wide, to be able to deal with the wide players, Bailey here as well. And I just think that subtle tweak can help us massively, and then we can press with a 2 if we need to. But I just think, for me, the last couple of games, this 2-2-2 has just left us open and isolated with, say, like a Garnacho against Moreno, Rashford against the Cash. That's just a sort of tweak I make. Justin, what would you sort of touch on what we've both mentioned?
It's been fascinating listening, to be fair. I've loved it. And I think that the point Lewis makes about missing Torres at the back is a huge one. And I don't think anybody underestimates what a big hole is left in the side. Everybody knows since he's come in, really. I thought he was a good player when he came in, but he's amazed me just how good he is. And he's a leader from the back. And that sort of on the turnover, when we got, especially against Chelsea, when they did turn us over, and that reset that Louis highlighted is a huge factor. And if you've got somebody at the back that can marshal the troops immediately and get everybody into positions where they should be, that makes it far easier then to combat what's coming at you. And because we've basically been thrown, and it's no fault of Diego Carlos's or Clement Longley's, that they are arguably, if everybody's fit, 4th and 5th choice centre-halves at Villa. But they're not bad 4th and 5th choice centre-halves. There's not many clubs that could play a quality of those two. But they just haven't got the skill set of Pau Torres. And we all know what Ezri Konsa brings to the side. He's been unbelievable. You know, he's a phenomenal footballer. So all of a sudden, we've got these two mainstays of our back four out, and other teams are, and it's no conscious, no, it's by this point now, teams are looking very deeply into how we play, and they're starting to find ways of counteracting how we play. So it's just the evolvement of football, isn't it? You know, you see this all of the time. Teams and top managers find ways of playing, and then everybody watches it, looks at it, and they evolve it, and then they work out how do we combat that. And the last two home games, Newcastle and Chelsea, we've been counted very, very easily. So I think it's down to Emery, and I couldn't think of a better manager to have in our dugout to combat what's happened than Unai Emery, because he will then go away and he will not sleep, literally will not sleep until he now comes up with a way to stop teams countering us the way that they've been doing. You know, we saw earlier in this sort of poorer run of form against Sheffield United and teams that came with no real want or need to beat us. They just wanted to come and not lose to us. And the low block became a problem, didn't it, of us trying to break these teams down. Now we're seeing the opposite, where teams are countering us and picking holes in our shape. And that's become a problem. So these two issues, they will, like you say, there is fixes for them, and I'm confident that will happen, you know, because he will highlight it to the squad and he will move players around. So I think Tielemans needs to drop a bit deep. I don't think that worked with him playing off Ollie Watkins particularly, but then I don't think Leon Bailey works as productive as he is on the right, coming off the right and cutting in. I don't think he's quite as good playing as a second striker. So there's tweaks there. There's lots of tweaks to have, and I'm confident that Unai can come up with another way of playing.
So Louis, moving on to Manchester United, what have you made of United this season, and how do you expect this game to go?
Well, Manchester United are an interesting story because of obviously what's gone on off the pitch and how Erik ten Hag likes to formulate on it, right? And I think two fundamental things, specifically looking ahead into this game, are going to be important to note. Number one, the noise that was happening with the Marcus Rashford drama has gone away. Now he's come back and like he's doing his thing. Garnacho's presence, very effective presence on the width, is going to be a very, very important thing for Aston Villa to look at. Listen, we're talking about Pau Torres and and Ezri Konsa, sorry. But Lisandro Martinez will not be playing in this game. So that's a big loss for them. So I think there are moments for Aston Villa to to take advantage of at the back. If we go back to the one where they came back 3-2, which is basically like an almost annual occurrence, Manchester United coming back from behind to beat Aston Villa. I think that was our own downfall, to be honest. It wasn't because they did anything specifically important or interesting. It was because we just like let ourselves, we allowed ourselves to get that danger to come in. So this game specifically, I mean, if you want, Luke, you can throw that graphic back on because it was brilliant. But when I look specifically at Manchester United and the things that they're going to try and do, well, here's a few. Number one, Luke Shaw's return to the lineup is massive. So you're going to see the same thing that we try and do with Matty Cash or Alex Moreno pushing forward. So Luke Shaw is going to be in there, trying to penetrate, trying to create those balls. It literally exactly what Alex Moreno tries to do. It's aside from the fact that, with all due respect to our beautiful Alex Moreno, Luke Shaw is a better defender coming back. So you're going to expect that on one side. Dalot as well is going to try and penetrate. Now, the key battle here for me is going to make sure that the midfield is extremely protected. So it goes back to your point, Luke, about making sure. I don't like McGinn so much on the left because it just, the reason why those gaps were happening against Chelsea was because the moment we lost the ball, there was, number one, Douglas Luiz was too deep, and Bouba Kamara was also too deep, and McGinn, who could easily fit in that role and protect. And when you have somebody like Bruno Fernandes, who's basically their architect, we have to make sure we protect that. Harry Maguire made a lot of mistakes against that West Ham game. So there's a lot for Ollie Watkins there to take advantage of. And Harry Maguire and Raphael Varane does not scare me as much as it probably would have done like a few years ago. So there is definitely an opportunity here for Ollie Watkins to get stuck in behind. And for, I don't know, is this the game where JJ comes back into the lineup? Where, you know, where perhaps Diaby, because of that goal, that consolation goal is going in midweek, comes in. I will say this about what's happened in the last game specifically, probably Newcastle. I disagreed with the wonderful Mr. Unai Emery, and everybody knows how much I love the man, but I disagreed with him on a few things. It took him a long time for him to make changes on Wednesday. And I think that this is exactly the reason why we decided to keep Irogbunam, to test yourself. We're losing. We're not doing well. Go out there and prove to everybody why you deserve a starting place or why you deserve to be ahead of somebody that's more experienced. The same thing with Jacob Ramsey. All right, you're fresh. You're good to go. Like he waited until the 70th plus minute to make changes. I don't want that to happen against Manchester United. And Erik ten Hag will probably see the Pochettino blueprint, and he kind of repeats it a little bit, where a counter-attacking, off-the-ball kind of aggressive team was going to try and push. Højlund is feeling more confident. So I like the lineup. I think that McGinn probably needs to drop a little deeper, and I wonder if now Jacob Ramsey takes on the role instead of somebody like Yuri Tillemans, and we play around more in the midfield. But the most important thing is please solidify that midfield and get at Harry Maguire and Raphael Varane.
You're getting me fired up. You're getting me fired up for it. I love it.
That's what I'm here for, baby.
Yeah. Justin, how are you feeling then going into it?
Yeah, I echo everything that Lewis said, really. I don't think we'll see a better double pivot performance against us than we saw for Chelsea. I thought Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo were absolutely incredible. After the first 10 minutes, once they got a foothold in the game, they literally run the show. And it's something we have seen so many times from us with our double pivot, with Luis and Kamara. So, you know, can Man United replicate that? Because everything that came from Chelsea in the cup game was from them too. You know, that's why our formation works so well, because the two in the double pivot in the sixes, they just control the game. And once they've got a hold of the game, they're dictating the pace, they're dictating the play, they're dictating the press, they're dictating sitting back. And like Louis said, they were out of position against Chelsea. And the two for Chelsea just ran the show, and they just picked passes. They found little through balls. They were playing through the lines. And with the four in front of them, McQuaid, Jackson, kind of Gallagher. They look like world beaters. They literally look like the Barcelona front four from about 10 years ago.
Pochettino saves his absolute best when he plays against Villa. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's you know, I've got my friends on the Chelsea fancast, and I've been speaking to them today, and that they literally said that is the best they have seen Chelsea play, not just this season, but for a long, long time. So I can't see Man United replicating that level against us, because I thought Chelsea's level against us was excellent. Ours was off it, no question, and we didn't help ourselves, there's no question about that. But I don't know if the Man United double pivot, very inexperienced Manu is it, and obviously Casemiro, very good player, and I don't think they've got the cover that Chelsea afforded them at the back either. I think, like you say, Harry Maguire is Harry Maguire, and I don't think Varane is the player that he was. So I think there is definite opportunities to get at them. We've got to up our level. Our level across the 11 was about 5 out of 10, and I'm being generous against Chelsea. We need to get back to a combined level of about 8 again, which is where we were pretty much consistently for the first 2-3 months of the season, which is why we saw such amazing results week in, week out performances. When we became used to it, didn't we? We just expected to turn up and play very well every week, and that just doesn't happen over a season. We're not the finished article. So I'm very hopeful that the things that have gone wrong over the last 2 home games will be ironed out. I think they'll all know their job come the kick-off against Man United, and I don't see Man United replicating how good Chelsea were. They're in good form, and the front four does worry me, without question. Højlund started scoring. The 2 wingers, Garnacho and the young lad the other side, Rashford, sorry, they're good. And as much as we hate Bruno Fernandes, he does have quality, doesn't he? So for me, it's the battle of the 2 sixes who comes out on top of there. If they're to dominate, we could be in trouble. If we can get hold of it early and dominate the game, and then we can release our players in the final third to do the damage, that's how I see the game going. Battle of the midfield.
Yeah, and talking about battle in the midfield, I just want to get your insight, Lewis, on this, the battle in midfield. Something that I've noticed recently is that 2 teams, Newcastle and Chelsea, man for man, Aston Villa on goal kicks now. And we know in our build-up play that Luiz and Kamara are quite important to retrieving the ball and moving it and working and getting Villa ticking. I think in this game, there's a possibility that we could go a little bit longer. We saw that against Newcastle, but it was just too high. It was sort of like the Diaby who was in the air against Dan Burn. I think if it goes to feet a little bit more, especially to McGinn at times, we can bypass this a little bit. And I think we're just coming under a little bit too much pressure. And I think with Casemiro and Mainu, again, against Kamara and Luiz, well, I want your sort of insight on how we're playing out from the back at the minute.
Yeah, good question, Luke. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. It begins with our center backs, and that's why we miss Pau Torres so much. Justin was talking about Lenglet a second ago, and the thing about him, and full credit, because he hasn't shied away from getting that starting role, and he's done some good long passes. But the key difference between a Pau Torres and a Lenglet is that when Pau Torres has the ball, he kind of plays like a midfielder. He's very comfortable with the ball. So when you usually watch highlights of him, you'll see drive up the pitch from a release from Diego Martinez, and he'll just keep going until he finds that trigger, and then boom, he'll just pass it. If you watch the highlights against Chelsea, Lenglet hesitated multiple occasions to keep going, and it's very important for our defenders, for our center backs, to keep going just a little bit. Trust yourself a little bit, because the Unai Emery system relies on triggers. We have to wait a little bit. So what happens is Diego Martinez has the ball and he waits to see the shape of the opponent. So I'm expecting Manchester United to be very similar to Chelsea. I'm going to press the moment the ball it goes to that first pass and maybe your back is towards the goal. If I don't press, I'm going to watch what you do. And that's where Lenglet hesitated. So it begins there. So if we can be much more proactive and not reactive, let's say Lenglet starts this game, which I'm pretty sure, I'm 50-50, and we're going to have to wait for the presser on Friday from Unai, but let's say he starts the game. He needs to be more comfortable bringing the ball forward as close to the midfield as possible. We go wide, Alex Moreno on one side, Mati Cash on the other, and this is where the double pivot is very important, because Douglas Luiz and Kamara have to be very quick. One of the things that I noticed specifically against Newcastle and Chelsea is that we're hesitating too much. Not the first touch, but the second. And when you have a Pochettino system that's in your face, when you have an Eddie Howe system that was also in your face, when you have an Eric Ten Hag system that's also going to be in your face, your pass better be first touch or your first touch better be cleaner than water, my friend. Otherwise, they're going to get that ball from us. So so that's why I agree with you that I think that we need to be a little bit tighter in the midfield. So there's more options. There's more triangular passing. Because the other part that was happening is once we were 2-0 down against Chelsea, Diego Carlos was trying to hit and hope to get that ball long to Ollie Watkins. And like you said, I think if we do that, it might be a little bit of an issue because Harry Maguire is a big unit and so is Rafael Varane. If we can play to feed, that's what we can make sure it goes well. That's why I really kind of want Jacob Ramsey in this starting 11, because I feel like he might be able to help with that, carrying the ball forward and just getting those triggers open. So it's going to be very interesting. But our system's not going to change. Unai Emery has said it from day one. Like we might evolve from it, we might play around with it, but we're always going to be play from the back, try and push the ball, get the center backs to drive it, go wide, then a 1-2 with McGinn. Like he tried to do that 3 times. The best moments came with McGinn, a first-time touch to Alex Moreno and trying to get across. We're going to see that again against Manchester United. The question will be, can we be crisper? Can we be cleaner with it? That's why Kamara and Douglas Luiz better be on it. Like Justin said, we just need to be a little bit crisper. Now, I think we're going to be, but my God, like I miss Pau Torres so much in the starting 11. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, we all do. We all do.
I do think there was a slight change. I totally agree with Lewis. I think that is our way of playing, and that will never change. But I do think the long ball against Newcastle was a slightly different attempt to maybe change things up. And as much as it became very frustrating because it didn't come off, you could sort of see what they were trying to do. We saw John McGinn the season before have a lot of joy on Damper, and then they changed it up and had Diaby on him, and I think they were just trying to drop the ball over the top and use his pace, thinking, well, he's much more mobile than Damper, so if we can just get it round the back or over the top, he's going to be in. The frustration came when they repeatedly tried to do it and they couldn't pull it off. But I do think that midfield has to somehow, it sort of needs to be a box midfield, either with the 4 starting, or I do agree with you, Jacob Ramsey in his prime gets in our first 11, I think, because of that ball carrying ability he does have. But if we do stick with the 4 in midfield and then we play 2 up top, whoever those 2 are, I would imagine it'd be Bailey and Watkins. The 4 in midfield, Tielemans, McGinn, Lewis and Kamara, have to just be more. We either play the way we're playing, like you're saying, and the first touch has to be great, and the second touch is a pass, and then the movement, they've got to be a bit tighter. And that, by doing that, your fullbacks have then got to engage and become the outlets going, which Newcastle and Chelsea managed to do very well against us. It's a battle of wits and wills, really. They can see how we can be got at. Can we counter it, and can we be better? I think that's the thing. We know our levels are very high. If we're all better, I think we still win the game.
Yeah, so we'll have a little look then at some of the numbers then. Some of them won't be good reading because we know what we like against Man United, but we've got some positives here. So we'll kick it off. Villa are 4th, United are 6th. We are averaging 2.1 goals per game in the Premier League. They're averaging 1.3. We're conceding 1.3 and they're conceding 1.4. They've lost 9 games. We've lost 5. Form guide, Villa's form goes into this slightly better than Manchester United's. And this is where the reading's not so great. Premier League era, played 57 times. Yeah, 3 home wins and 17
we all get
away
it.
wins. So, yeah, not great. This one, not so much either. This graphic I just wanted to touch on as well. It shows you the passing network against West Ham for Manchester United. It really picks up on Louis' point about Luke Shaw going forward. Again, you can see that their sort of midfield, Casemiro and Mainu, are instrumental to everything for them going forward. Garnacho, Rashford offering that width on both sides. But, there are areas here to exploit when they do overcommit, especially behind Luke Shaw and Dalot. This graphic, I really like this one as well, shows the team styles. So, as you can see, Manchester United are in the fast and direct, but are passing with a sequence of higher than teams like Everton and West Ham. And then Villa are edging closer now towards more slow and intricate. For most parts of this season, we've been sort of slap bang in the middle of fast and direct and slow and intricate, but now we're moving towards more slow and intricate as well. This was West Ham's passing network against Manchester United. So West Ham played quite well in this game. You can see where West Ham attacked Manchester United predominantly down that right-hand side and through the left-hand side. The West Ham shot map in this game, West Ham were the blue and lost 3-0. Man United were the red and won 3-0. You can see that West Ham got more shots off. And this was the XG with shots by the minute. So again, you can see that West Ham were pretty dominant in this game. This graphic I want to highlight as well, and it shows Villa's build-up attacks to direct attacks this season. So Aston Villa's build-up attacks are 58 and 55. And in comparison, you can see from Arsenal, they are 118 in build-up attacks and direct attacks 37. So you can see that Villa are quite close between mixing it up with building up possession-based football, but also quick and direct as well. So maybe potentially we could edge towards the quick and direct against United, like we were saying about going a bit longer. If United are going to sort of try and hit us on transition, maybe we can try and do the same to them. And then we've got XG by open play. Villa's XG this season is 31.34. Goals are 34. So we are kind of outscoring our XG from open play. And then we've got set piece goals here as well. So Aston Villa have got an XG from set pieces of 0.59 and we are at an XG of 9. So Louis, I really want to just finally get your insights on the recruitment policy of Villa. What did you make of Villa's new direction that we went through in the summer, in the January window, sorry?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was going to be limited to, sustainability rules and financial fair play. And it just wasn't going to be, this is the thing about the January transfer window, specifically this one. People were, why aren't we getting eggs or why or whatever? Well, it's because they cost a lot of money and we have to prove to the rules. And also we have to remember, Thustin, we don't have this is the first time in a very long time. In fact, I would say ever in the Premier League. And I mean, I've been following this club for a very, very long time, but this is the first time we have a manager that's so good. One of his assets, one of his strengths in his resume, and Unai Emery, is he finds somebody and he makes them better. Like just straight boom. And that's Morgan Rogers. And I just think it was just such a good acquisition. For the money that he cost, because it was, it's only going to push up to about 15 million pounds if all the add-ons are hit. And some of them are very unlikely to happen. B, because of his age. But C, because he fits all the categories and all the characteristics that Villa want to do. They need a winger that can also be an attacker, that can also be a second striker, that's eager, that's quick, that's smart. That's Morgan Rogers. And it was done at a really good price. And now he's young and he's going to continue to evolve. So I was very happy with that. Listen, for a very long time, I've been worried about our strikers' opportunities, especially since Cam Archer left. And for a very long time, I actually thought Jon Duran, who has been a victim of a lot of criticism, but obviously, as you guys know, and if everybody that follows me on social, I've added a lot of context on what's going on. But he's somebody that I really thought should have gone on loan away from the Premier League, just get used to Europe, because he went from Colombia to Major League Soccer to England. That's not easy. And this is a very young kid, 19 years old, 20 years old. So I wanted him to go on loan. And then that's where I think we should have been more aggressive, even earlier than the January transfer window, and trying to get another striker that could maybe be more ready, right? But because I'm telling you, the talent in Jon Duran is there. It's just that I wanted us to be more patient. Obviously, he's injured now till April. From the reports and the rumors that we were also looking for other players as well. I mean, we got the Australian goalkeeper, Joe Gachi, who's fantastic, and he shares a lot of similarities to Dibu Martinez. So that's a great acquisition. And I trust in what Monchi's doing. I think another right back obviously would have been beneficial, because you cannot over-rely on Ezri Konsa to always have that role. And with Matty Cash, because he commits himself so much that the injury prones are likely to be there. But overall, given the limitations, given the financial restraints, I'm happy with it. I mean, a lot of it is going to depend on where we end at the end of the season, but the summer is going to be another very, very big season. And Unai Emery has said it, and I agree, and I have my own sources. And, in order to get some really big and good and opportunistic incomings, we have to expect some, I wouldn't say our most important players in terms of outgoings, but we can't be too emotionally attached to everybody. This is a football club, but it's also a business. So I think Morgan Rogers, really good money, a lot of potential. He could even do something as early as this Sunday. So I'm happy overall. Like, we just have to be realistic about where we are in the Premier League, both from a financial perspective, from a footballing perspective. And, we're not Man City, we're not Liverpool, we're not even, Arsenal yet. Like, we are still trying to build up and create something. It's the same reason why Arsenal didn't get Ivan Toney or another striker. The money is just not there, because you have to meet to the sustainability rules, which, as we understand it from recent reports, are going to change once again. So overall, I'm happy. And we just, got the luck of the draw that we're getting a lot of injuries right now. But I'm very confident that the health will come back and we'll be stronger for it. But we have a manager that makes every single player better. Name me a player, Aston Villa fans, and look at his trajectory from now to the end. Leon Bailey's about to get a brand new contract. Literally, it's about to happen anytime soon in terms of an official announcement. And he is the perfect example of what happens when you're patient and you have a manager that tells you exactly what he wants from you and how to develop. So just trust the process. I'm a Knicks fan, so I hate doing this from a Philadelphia standpoint.
Yeah,
the
spot on.
most ridiculous
I was back. Can I ask Lewis one question? Just one question before we go. Just based on your on the Man United average position, going through all those things, what they seem to be very, very down the left hand side. Everything goes down the left hand side. What would you do on Sunday with our right back? Obviously, if Conche's fit, he probably plays there. If Pau Torres is back, so you'd have the back three, the three centre half things. Would you stick with Cash, as he did get isolated quite a lot, and they did take advantage of that position? If Man United are going to attack very heavily down the left, given what we've got available, would you stick with Cash, or would you go with a Carlos? I mean, the only options really are Carlos, Chambers, which I don't see happening,
right? Yeah.
Or the only other one, which I threw in the mix on Twitter, is Irabonum.
No, I saw that. I think, it's good to go out there and try and experiment something. He's a young kid that wants to impress himself. I worry a little bit because it's not really his position. He's more like a DM, a cover for that center mid role. Listen, what you're going to see on the left side from Manchester United is going to be almost identical to what we saw from Pochettino and Chelsea. I don't know if they're going to apply it as well, because remember, Matty Cash was dealing with a lot of left side attack, and Ben Chilwell was also giving a lot of effort on that side. And it's what I said earlier, right? Yes, worried about Ezri Konsa on that right side. But Diego Carlos saved us a lot of times in that Chelsea game, doing a lot of clearances. But one of the reasons why they were exploiting that left side, Chelsea, was because the second run was not being followed. And that's Douglas Luiz's responsibility, or Bouba Kamara's, depending on where they are. I love Douglas Luiz, obviously, one of the best players in that position that we have seen in modern history of Aston Villa. But Matty Cash, what happens is he goes forward, he loses the ball, and that run in behind, right? Nico Jackson had like 3 years to make crosses. And that's because we need our defensive midfielders to be on it, or at least Diego Carlos to be quicker on it. So I think that what's going to happen is we're going to see the same thing. Matty Cash will be on that right side purely because Ezri Konsa is injured. I don't think he's going to trust Callum Chambers to take that role against Manchester United.
Carlos could play there, Lewis. If
as
Torres
a right
is fit
back
to start. Well, to play in that, if Torres is fit to start, hypothetically, I know that would leave us with two left-footed centre halves with long lay.
If Pau Torres can start, yes, I trust him to be there. Yes, I do. I trust him to be there. The only worry for me about Diego Carlos is his speed. And when you have Luke Shaw and maybe Mainu as well, who's just a tremendous young player from Manchester United who might want to venture on that left side as well. And then you have, of course, Rashford and Garnacho. Like, I worry a little bit about the speed of Manchester United, because the Erik ten Hag system sometimes waits for you to make a mistake and then boom, they counter. So, but I do think, like, I guess the question is, what's more important, starting Pau Torres or making sure, right? That's the most important thing, right? So it's going to be Pau Torres on the left, I think, and you could see a situation where Diego Carlos covers in that spot. But to me, we just have to make sure that Douglas Luiz and Kamara, that double pivot, needs to be on it on it, because the biggest problem with a right back with Matty Cash's situation is that we are encouraging to go forward, but that run behind, it's not going to work if we don't have Douglas Luiz or Bouba Kamara like covering, which they had a terrible game. Kamara was awful, and he's amazing, and he's not going to repeat that on Sunday. It's not going to happen.
Yes, loved it. Loved having you on. Right, before you go, score prediction then. Basically, I've done an opposition preview with a very big Manchester United channel that's coming out on Saturday. So I've already said on that it's going to be 2-2. I recorded it before.
You're giving it a draw. Okay, all right.
So I've got to stick with what I said a couple of days ago. So I'm going 2-2. I feel like a draw's not a bad result in the big picture. Keeps the gap to 8 points. But what are you going with, Louis?
Well, listen. I think people need to remember that, let's see, when we beat Middlesbrough on January 6th in the FA Cup, and then that Everton game where we should have won, it was just like ridiculous that we didn't, but we didn't. It's okay, fair play. After that, it was a 0-0 against Chelsea, and then the terrible disaster of Newcastle and Chelsea on Wednesday. But in between that, my friend, was a 5-0 result against Sheffield United. I get it, bottom of the table, but it was a reaction. I'm expecting another reaction. And I'm expecting an Aston Villa win. And I'm expecting a 3-1 win. Like, I think that Aston Villa are going to be up for this. Woken up. Manchester United have recently done well, and I'm worried about all their weapons and assets. But I think Lisandro Martinez's absence is a key thing, because Ollie Watkins is going to look at Harry Maguire and Rafael Varane, and he's going to say, I'm going to outpace you every single time. Play the ball to me, and I'll do it. So I really think that it's going to be one of these games where Villa just says, enough of this nonsense. Let's get to it. 3-1 to Aston Villa. Thank you very much.
Love it. Justin's probably going to back you up with a 5-0. So, Justin, what are you going with?
Look, if it's good enough for Luis, it's good enough for me. 3-1. That's what I'm having.
Love it. So, thank you, everybody. I'll put Luis Miguel Echegaray's socials in the description. Go and follow him. He spoke utter sense for 37 minutes, and he talks it on Twitter, X, all his socials. So go and follow him on there. SofaScore, best football app. Go in, make sure you download it. You can scan the QR code on the screen, and the link will be in the description as well. Helps this channel out massively. So if you've enjoyed this episode, then the least you can do is download that app. So thanks, everybody. Up the Villa.
Up the Villa.